Hello, and welcome back to Forgotten Hollywood, the channel where I take you back in time to show you the movies, shows, and actors that have faded over the years. From the very birth of the television medium, the sitcom has been a favorite format. Literally meaning situational comedy, it's built on characters rather than genre or setting. The more interesting the characters, the better. This is not a formula, as it varies by episode, even though similar things can happen in different situations. One of the earliest and most famous of all sitcoms is I Love Lucy. You might think of that show as formulaic. Lucy wants to do something. Lucy tries a crazy way to do it. Lucy gets in trouble. Ricky yells. They make up and live happily ever after. However, that's not the plot of every episode. Ricky and Fred get into trouble a fair amount of the time, and sometimes characters go to Lucy for help because they think that only a crazy scheme can get them out of whatever situation they're in. That's what makes a sitcom, a series of endless comedic situations. The first few decades of television gave us some of the most iconic sitcoms. These include shows like Hogan's Heroes, Gilligan's Island, Lost in Space, Mr. Ed, Bewitched, Leave It to Beaver, The Addams Family, I Dream of Jeannie, The Dick Van Dyke Show, and the earlier mentioned I Love Lucy. This is what makes that era of sitcoms so incredible. They had something for everyone. They had sci-fi, horror, fantasy, and the classic fish out of water trope. They even had parallel shows, such as the Beverly Hillbillies with the backwoods family in the big city, and Green Acres when the rich couple moves into the modest farm. What do they have today? Your choice of dysfunctional family or a group of friends living in a city. You want something else? Well, there's always reruns. So what happened? What caused the decline of the sitcom? To find that out, we first need to see where it peaked. Now, you might think that the golden age of the sitcom, like many other things, was the 50s and 60s. However, that's not the case. At the birth of television in the 1940s, there were 11 American sitcoms on the air. This increased to 98 in the 50s and 145 in the 60s. The trend continued to go up to 195 in the 70s and 247 in the 80s. However, it was the 1990s where the format exploded to 380 sitcoms airing on American television during that decade. This was the era of Friends, Everybody Loves Raymond, Frasier, Seinfeld, Married with Children, The Simpsons, Full House, The Cosby Show, Third Rock from the Sun, Family Matters, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and Home Improvement. What happened after this comedy high? What always happens when something goes up? It came down. Hard. In the 2000s, the number of American sitcoms was 224, nearly 160 fewer than the previous decade. The 2010 saw the number drop to 179, and in the 2020s saw a near record low of 91. In other words, there are fewer American sitcoms on the air today than there were when television had only 4 channels. Think about that for a second. The time of the decline is the most telling clue for the downfall of the format. The new millennium ushered in the age of reality TV. Although the roots of the genre actually go back to the 1940s with Candid Camera, and the first recognizable American reality show was An American Family in the 1970s, the modern era of reality television kicked off in 1992 with MTV's The Real World. But it was shows like Survivor and Big Brother that captured the country. These shows combined the reward of a game show with the drama of a soap opera. No wonder Americans were obsessed. Each week, millions would tune in to see who was voted out, and that was just the beginning. More and more reality shows came out. some following families, some seeing strangers compete for big prizes. There were those that highlighted professions and others for hobbies. Ones where the contestants worked toward their dream job, and others that followed animals that didn't even know they were famous. Reality TV, although a major factor, isn't the only dagger plunged into sitcom supremacy. Another thing to take into account is the rise of streaming services. With Netflix, Hulu, Prime, and the like starting in the mid 2000s, viewers now had a variety of video on demand, including past sitcoms. You no longer had to wait for odd hours or pay for TV Land to get the classic favorites, in addition to everything else made available, thus lowering the demand for new sitcoms. The final blow to the format was the change in culture. Let's face it, a PC environment has basically outlawed most forms of comedy. Most of the jokes, other than slapstick, were at the expense of somebody else, be it a gender, religion, profession, race, lifestyle, or ability. The one seemingly safe bet was crude adult humor. Granted, some crude humor goes well beyond PC, but as the more generic adult humor is only offensive to those society would call prudes, it was allowed. I happen to fall into that category, as adult and crude jokes are things I've never found funny. So there are very, very few modern sitcoms I enjoy. The last one I really liked was Last Man Standing. This show was successful because it was done in the style of the 90s sitcom.
Why are we taking a break? What are we taking a break from?
How about a break from your mouth?
She seems nice.
To bolster my self-esteem, I would adopt this raffish new look.
Well, it suits you. Dashing and yet understated and, Oh, I give up. What are we talking about?
My mustache. I grant you it's at an early stage.
What stage? Research and development?
Hey, nice essay, Mandy.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, Virginia Woolf. Impressive.
Yeah, I've always loved her work.
So, do you have a favorite?
All of them.
Mandy,
Yeah,
name one.
I couldn't choose.
Spell wolf.
I don't want to.
Oh, you know you can't submit this, right?
Mom,
Mandy, you didn't write it.
when did you figure it out?
The first I in Virginia.
The humor is not always PC, but that's what makes it unique. It defies modern conventions, and in that way, the traditional sitcom has become the extreme case. That's an interesting development, as the sitcom and other types of movies and shows have long been a vehicle for social change. For example, in Lucille Ball's first sitcom, I Love Lucy, she is a married housewife starring opposite her real-life husband, Desi Arnaz. However, when she made The Lucy Show in 1962, she had divorced Desi, so her character in that show was a widow raising two children. Due to a stigma around divorce, the network was really concerned about showing the beloved Lucy as a divorcee, even though she really was. They did allow Vivian Vance, best known for playing opposite Lucy as Ethel Mertz in I Love Lucy, to play a divorcee as Lucy's best friend. It was the first time a divorced woman had ever been shown on primetime television. By the 1980s, divorced characters were leads in their respective shows, such as B. Arthur's Dorothy in The Golden Girls. And today it's about as common as having a character be married. Another example is Three's Company, where a man pretends to be gay to live in a house with two women. 20 years later, Will and Grace weren't pretending. Today, well, you know what we have today. It's funny to think about the sitcom as dying, since it's been a staple of television from the beginning. But even the popular format can't stand up to the combined efforts of reality TV, streaming platforms, and the changing culture. Personally, I'm not heartbroken about it. The better shows from the past are still out there, and that's good enough for me. Modern television in general seems to be on a downhill slope, right along with the sitcoms. People just don't write comedy like they used to. Thanks for watching. What's your favorite sitcom? Is it modern, from the peak in the 90s, or do you prefer the early years? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the bell for notifications, and I will catch up with you next time.